So in this After Effects tutorial, we will create this awesome looking title animation without using any plugins in After Effects. Now there will be a lot of different effects that we will use in order to achieve the final look. So make sure you follow this video step by step, and if you found something difficult to follow, just rewatch it, take your time and enjoy. And also just take a few seconds to check out my full-fledged After Effects course, link to which is in the description below. With that said, let's jump straight into After Effects and get started. Alright, so here we are in After Effects. Let's start by creating a new composition. Let's call this render, and I'm gonna switch to 2K, so that is 2560 by 1440. You can also go with 4K or 1920 by 1080, that is full HD as well. Frame rate is set to 30 FPS and duration is set to 10 seconds. Press OK. Now let's create another new composition. This is going to be a text placeholder, so let's call this text with the similar properties and press OK. Select the text tool and type in whatever text that you want. I'm going to type in broken, just like you saw in the example. For the font, I'm using 𝗕𝗲𝘀𝘁, link to which is in the description. Let's increase the size a little bit like so. Now let's go ahead and animate this text. So to do that, I'll go right here, go into animate and add a tracking. So now we can animate the tracking. Now if your text doesn't animate from center, go to paragraph tab and make sure the alignment is set to center. By default it should be left aligned, but make sure to switch it to center and align it properly. So now let's go ahead and animate this. So I'll set the tracking amount to around 500, create a keyframe, go to 5 frames and let's set this to 300. Then go 8 frames forward in time, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 by hitting page down, and let's set this to 280. Then go 5 frames forward again, 1 2 3 4 5, and let's set this to 100. Then let's go 5 frames forward again, 1 2 3 4 5, set this to 80, and then let's go to around 1 second and set this to 0. Now I can select all the keyframes, press F9 to easy ease them, or right click, go into keyframe assistant and easy ease. Then I can go into the graph editor and tweak the graph, but I will be using a free script to do it. So I'll go into Windows and launch the keyframe wingman script. Now keyframe wingman is a free script that comes along with Animation Composer. Link to download Animation Composer extension is in the description below. Well, you can do this without this extension or this script as well, but using this really helps us to get the animation done. So now if I preview this, we have this really cool look. Doing this manually for every single graph would have taken a lot of time. So our base text animation is ready. Last thing that I want to do is select the layer and let's launch the effects and control panel. So let me find that. Search for transform effect, double click to apply that, and let's skew this a little bit like so, just to make it look a bit more interesting. So now we have this really nice animation. Now let's create another new composition. This is going to be a fractal for our text. So let's call this text fractal and press OK. Press Ctrl Y to create a new solid. Let's call this fractal again. Go into effects and presets and search for fractal noise. Double click to apply that. Let's change the noise type from soft linear to block. Bring down the complexity to around 2. Set the contrast to around 360 and set the brightness to -240. Let's create a keyframe on the brightness. Then go into the transform properties, unlink this, set the rotation to 12, scale width to around 1200. And now I'll press U so I can see the keyframe. Let's go around 5 frames forward in time. So I'll jump to 5 frames and set the brightness to -120. Go to 15 frames and set this to -90. Then I'll go to around 20 frames, set this to -50. And then I'll go to around, let's say 1 second and 5 frames and set this to 250. Then go to 3 seconds and create another keyframe. Go to 4 seconds and let's bring that down all the way back to -250. So now if I preview this, we have something which looks like this. Now let's go ahead and build up our text animation. So I'll create another new composition. Let's call this text animation. Drag the text composition and the text fractal below that. I can hide the text fractal. Let's select the text layer and go into effects and presets and search for an effect called set matte. Double click to apply that. Let's set the take matte from layer to text fractal and set this to luminance. So now if I preview this, we have this really interesting look. But to make it look even more complex, I will be using displacement map effect. So let's go into effects and presets and search for displacement map. Double click to apply that. Let's set this to text fractal. Let's go at the very start, set this to -100 and let's leave it at 5. Create a keyframe on the max horizontal displacement and the max vertical displacement. Select the layer, press U. Let's go to around 20 frames. Let's set the max horizontal displacement to -90 and the max vertical displacement to 40. You can play around with the values to create a unique look, whichever you think looks cool. Then go to around 25 frames. Let's bring that down to -70 and this one to 30. Then go to 1 second and set them to 0. So now if I preview this, we have something which looks like this. Pretty cool. Now I can duplicate the displacement map, press Ctrl D to duplicate it. Let's go at the very start. In the displacement map tool, let's set the max vertical displacement to -40. Then go right here, set this to -30. And yeah, that looks much better. So now if I preview this, it looks a bit more complex, as you can see. Pretty cool. Now we need to create some fractal textures in order to drive the animation. So to do that, I'm going to create a new composition called this F_01. Make sure to name it. Press Ctrl Y to create a new solid. I'll call this F for fractal. Go into effects and presets and search for fractal noise. Double click to apply that. Let's set this to block. I'll increase this to around 135 and set the brightness to 135 as well. Then I'll zoom into my timeline, go to 20 frames and create a keyframe on the brightness. Let's also bring down the complexity to 1. Press U so I can see the keyframes. Go to 1 second and let's set this to -10. So we have something like this. Then select the layer, go into effects and presets and search for a very cool effect called 𝗕𝗂𝘁 kaleidoscope. All right. And using this effect, you can create some really interesting patterns. You can play around with this. So maybe I'll go with something like this. Looks good to me. Okay. So this pattern is looking quite nice, I think. Yeah. So this is looking nice. Now what I'm going to do is duplicate this composition. So press Ctrl D. So now we have F2. Let's jump into that. And here I have a few textures. By the way, you can download the free project file, link to which is in the description. You will get all the textures inside that project. So let's drag the texture to below this. Make sure to scale it so it fits our composition like so. And change the track matte of this to Luma inverted. Now, if you don't see this track matte option, make sure to click on toggle switch mode and that should make it visible. So now we have this interesting look, as you can see. Now I can create another copy, press Ctrl D. So now we have F3, open that up and let's replace the texture 2 with texture 3. So I can select both of them, hold Alt and drag on top of each other. That is going to replace that. And let's create another copy, press Ctrl D. So now we have F4, open that up and replace it with texture 4. So that looks really cool. One thing that I want to do here is right click and create a new adjustment layer on the top. Let's call this levels. Then go into effects and presets, search for levels, double click to apply that. And let's set the input black value to around 75 and input white value to 210. There we go. So it looks a bit more sharper. Okay, that is looking really nice. So all the base elements are ready. Now we can start building up our scene in the main render composition. So I'll go back into my render composition. I can close the keyframe menu. Now I'll drag all the 4 fractal composition that we just created. Let's drag them and hide them. Press Ctrl Y to create a new solid called this BG for background, and I can add a fill on top of that. So let's search for fill and I'll make it kind of a black. All right. let's drag the text animation on top like so. So now we have our base text animation. Now we will start building up the complete animation. So we will be using a lot of different effects. So I want you to pay attention here when we tweak settings. Okay, so let's go into effects and presets, search for fill, add the fill effect, and now let's give it a nice color. So I'm going to go with a nice blue one, press OK, and then go into effects and presets again, search for an effect called fine edges, double click to apply that, invert this, and let's set the blend to around 25%. Now I want to extract some of the blacks from this text. So what I'm going to do is search for an effect called extract, double click to apply that. And now using this point, I can drag it to extract it. So now if I turn on the, you can see what we're doing here. This is how it looks before we extract. And this is how it looks as we extract this like so. So I can actually select the point and drag it like so. So we get a really nice look. Then I'm going to add a set matte effect on this. Set this to F1, that is fractal 1, and change the use from matte to luminance. And this is going to give us this really nice pattern, as you can see. So it looks really cool, I think. Now let's go ahead and add an effect called turbulent displace, just to give it a little bit more movement. Let's set this to 20 and this to 20. And we can animate the evolution. So I can add a simple expression on evolution. So hold Alt, click on the stopwatch, and let's type in time times 20. So now we have a little bit movement into our text, which is going to be very subtle. Maybe I think I'll increase the speed a little bit. So let's go with something like 50. Okay, so it's very subtle and looks very cool. Now let's go ahead and finally add a glow effect on this. Okay, and for the glow threshold, I'll set this to around 90%. Now let's duplicate this text animation, press Ctrl D, and I'll get rid of basically all the effects here except the set matte and the turbulent displace. Oh, maybe I don't need this one as well. I'm going to use an effect called displacement map here. All right, let's set this to F1. I'll move my time indicator at 1 second. Let's set the horizontal and vertical displacement to 0 and create a keyframe. Go to 2 seconds and let's set this to 5 and this one to 5. Then go to 3 seconds and set this to 8 and this one to 8. Okay. So now we have something like this. It looks like it's displacing, very cool. Let's duplicate this again. This time I'm going to change the set matte from F1 to F2 and I'll leave the color as it is. I think it looks good, or maybe we can go with a much more intense tone just to add a little bit more variation. Also, I will add a turbulent displace on this. So let's add turbulent displace, or maybe I'll just copy the turbulent displacement from here. So I'll press Ctrl C and press Ctrl V to paste it. I can use the same exact expression and stuff. So it looks really cool. Okay, so that is looking really interesting. Now let's create another duplicate, press Ctrl D, and this time I'm going to make this a bit more intense blue, and let's get rid of the turbulent displace. Duplicate this one more time, press Ctrl D, and this time I'm going to change the set matte to F3, and we can get rid of the keyframe animations from the displacement map. Change the displacement map layer to F3 as well. And let's increase the max horizontal displacement and max vertical displacement to 50 like so. And then duplicate the displacement map and set this to -50 and this one to -50 just to make it a bit more complex. Then we can add some glows on this. I'll search glow, add that. Let's increase the glow radius, really nice. And we can play around with the threshold as well. So now if I preview this, we have this really interesting look, as you can see. Let's select the bottom one, press Ctrl D to duplicate it, place it on the top, and I'm going to change the color of this one to something like a nice neonish purple. And then what I'm going to do is zoom in and move this, change the placement of this a little bit like so. and select the bottom one and move this like so, just to add a bit more three-dimensional look. I can move these shapes a little bit as well. Let's select this one, that is this layer. I'll press Ctrl D to duplicate it, place it on the top. I can change the color to something different because this is going to be a really a big layer with a lot of different effects. So first of all, I'll change the color of this one to something like a pinkish red, like so. Change the set matte to F4 and the displacement map to F4 as well. I can delete the rest of the layers. Okay, so I'll go to around, let's say somewhere around 20 or 25 frames. Set the displacement to 0 and make sure you create a keyframe. Press U so we can see the keyframes. Then I'll go somewhere around there. Let's increase them to 50. Let's go a few frames forward and let's set them to 70. Then I'll go to 5 seconds and let's set them to 130. So now we have something like this, but now let's make them look a bit more complex. So I'll duplicate the displacement map, press Ctrl D, and then what I'm going to do is go right here and let's set this to -50 and this one to -50. Go right here. Let's set this to -70 and this one to -70. And I'll go right here and set this to -30, -130, and this one to -130. So now if I preview this, we have this really complex look, as you can see. Pretty cool. I'll also animate the blue strikes that are happening in the background or in the back of the text. So let me find this. So yeah, that is the one. I can change the color of this one to actually blue. And I'll animate the displacement map for this one as well. What I can do is basically copy the same keyframes, I think. So what I'll do is actually select the displacement map from here, both of them, press Ctrl C. Okay, I'll place my time indicator right here at the first keyframe. Select this one and let's get rid of the displacement map from here. And let's hit Ctrl V. If I hit U, and there we go. So yeah, both of them animates like that, but I think the blue one is way too intense for me. So what I'm going to do is change the displacement map from F4 to F3, something like that. So yeah, I think that is looking pretty intense. So now let's preview this. Let's see what we have so far. Yeah, I think that is looking really cool. So much detail is going on here. Now the elements are looking way too sharp. So in order to make them a bit more smoother, what we can do is select the first one again and let's add a vector blur on this. So let's search for vector blur, CC vector blur, and set the amount to very minimal, like 2. So it makes it a bit more smoother. And then finally, let's add some glow on this. Let's set the radius to 0 actually, and play around a little bit with the threshold here. Let's set this to 80. Okay, and basically our animation is ready, but now let's also add a nice camera movement, like a shaky camera movement here. I'm going to right click and create a new adjustment layer. Let's call this shake. And I'm going to go into effects and presets, search for transform, double click to apply that. And on transform, I'll also add a slider control on this, so we can actually control the wiggle or the shake that is going to happen. So I'm going to type in a very simple expression on the position of the transform property. So hold Alt and click on this, and then we can add a simple expression called wiggle. Open parentheses, let's type in 30, comma, and then parent this expression to our slider. So now what is going to happen is, using the slider, we can control the wiggle. So if I increase this, boom, there we have a wiggle, a really nice camera shake, which is quite intense. We can make it like very minimal, like so. Looks pretty cool. So let's place the time indicator at the very start, create a keyframe on the slider control, go when the bang happens right here, set this to 4, go forward in time and set this to 0 again. So now if I preview this, we have this nice bang happening with a nice camera shake, which settles down slowly. So now we have boom. Looks very cool, by the way. And there you go. There you have your tearing or breaking title animation inside of After Effects. I know it was a long video because it was a bit complex, to explain so many different things, to explain so many different steps. So but I hope you enjoyed it anyways. And if you create something, if you post it on social media, do tag me. I would love to check it out and share it on my stories as well. So that is a wrap for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, do let me know in the comments section below. You can also follow me on Instagram at 𝗕𝗲𝘀𝘁. And if you're feeling generous, please do support us on Patreon. It will mean a lot to me. With that said, I will see you guys in the next video. Till then, take care and always stay raw, stay creative. Peace out.